Well, it's that time again. Let's walk in faith, talk about anime, and grow together. Welcome to Reb's Otaku Talk. Hey Otaku family, welcome back to Reb's Otaku Talk, where faith and fandom collide. I'm your host Rev, and joining me is my co-host K2.
Howdy guys, good evening.
And together we'll venture into the world of anime through the lens of Christian values. Whether you're a seasoned otaku or just starting your anime journey, this is the place where we blend our love for all things anime with a walk in Christ. Join us as we explore thought-provoking themes, inspiring stories, and tackle the deeper connections between our favorite shows and our faith. It's all about finding God's truth in the worlds we love. This is your Christ Walk with Otaku Talk. Let's get started. How's it going, K2?
It's going pretty good. I can't complain this week. How about you?
Doing all right. It's been an adventure since recording our first episode. Just released today, and I will tell you, editing that throughout the week and then getting it dispersed and distributed and then listening to it online, I can tell you that I've learned a lot on what not to do. So hopefully this week's will not be so shifty in the volumes. I have to tell you and our audience this. Whenever I did Questions from a Cup, we had this very big fanfare. It's like a medieval fanfare that is used generically on quite a few fantasy animes.
Yeah. And
the fanfare played, and my daughter started crying because it scared the living snot out of her because it was so much louder than the talking. So, we are not going to do that again. So with that being said, today we're going to dive into the world of Trigun. So guys, grab your Pocky and your Ramune and let's talk anime through a Christ-centered lens. Trigun was created by Yashiro Naitao. Trigun is set in the distant future on a barren planet. Vash the Stampede is a notorious gunfighter with a reputation so brutal, he has a $6 billion bounty on his head. When the word of his arrival spreads, entire towns flee in fear. However, the truth about Vash is far from the ruthless legend that precedes him. The mysterious and conflicted protagonist of Trigun is actually a more heroic figure, though he can be completely clueless at times.
Yes, he is. I remember that show back. I haven't watched it since I was in college, but yeah, that was a good show, and he was pretty much a klutz.
Yeah. Like I said last week, whenever I kind of threw a sprinkle of what was going to happen in this episode out there, another pastor recommended this to me.
Okay.
And I had been questioning watching it or not because of the fact that I'm not a huge Wild West guy.
Mm-hmm.
I like certain Westerns. I don't like all of them. And the thought of a sci-fi Western, it was like, okay, we're going to get another Aliens versus Cowboys anime style, and I just did not want to disappoint myself like that. But I finally gave it a shot after it was recommended to me.
Yeah, it's like Cowboy Bebop, but in the desert and not in space.
Yeah, and Vash is a whole lot more...
Yeah.
Klutzy. But as I watched it, it honestly astonished me, the development of all the characters, as all of them are completely different personalities, but in the end they all came together, where at the beginning they were kind of against each other or they were passively aggressive towards each other, and to see it evolve into a team.
Yep.
Was really cool, and I really started dissecting it after that. As we watch it throughout the course of this, like, again, sci-fi Wild West adventure, we follow Meryl and Millie, who are two lady insurance agents that are charged with the responsibility of finding and investigating the allegations against Vash the Stampede concerning the amount of damage he's done to towns in his name. And that's the whole thing. Damage was done in his name. As they travel alongside this mysterious gunslinger, they find him to be very compassionate, full of faith, and a person who would not take a life but would look to find a way to solve the problem with no fatalities, even if the person deserved it. We also discovered as we watched it, he has a lot of self-doubt, and we learn this a lot whenever a pastor character named Wolfwood joins the journey, and then upon Vash's death, he learns a very important lesson with the weight of a cross. A literal cross.
Yep. Well, the cross is a gun case, isn't it?
The cross itself is a gun.
It is the gun. That's what it was.
It's a very, very cool gun.
Yes.
It's wrapped up in cloth, and it's the cloth is held shut by leather straps, and he's got a leather strap that goes over his shoulder, and he carries the cross everywhere he goes. And the cross was his weapon against evil and against stuff that didn't go well with the religious sect that he was a part of. Come to find out that the pastors were assassins, which was a crazy twist. They were assassins pinned on evil.
That seems to be a running theme in anime, I've noticed.
Well, the crazier part is that a lot of the pastors ended up being evil themselves. And that can relate to corruption in the church, which, sad enough, happens. And it's not good whenever it happens. I've seen some pastors go rogue, and I've seen some pastors say some not so savory things from a pulpit. We're not talking fire and brimstone. We're talking about profanities, and I've been witness to it. So I know that whenever it's in a church, that stuff can be there, and it's sad because the people who follow them, they're not seeing Christ the way they should. And that was part of a message that, that I kind of got out of that was, especially in today's world where the book of Revelations is a very huge thing. It basically says, beware of wolves in sheep's clothing, beware of false prophets. And there are some pastors out there who are not going to be in the spot that they should be. There are a lot of pastors who have admitted, I got into pastoring because of the paycheck. Because if they hit a mega church and they did everything right, they'd be making bank. I mean, there's pastors who drive around in Lamborghinis in some of those mega churches. They make that much money. So some people take advantage of it, and it's a big falsity. And I think that's where nowadays we have a lot of skepticism whenever it comes to church, and a lot of pushback, and a lot of people don't want to do it, and that's where they look and they say, oh, the church is full of hypocrites. I can almost guarantee that you're judging them the way they're judging you. So aren't you, at that point I always question people, don't you see yourself being a little hypocritical in that as well?
Yeah, I think, and also from our generation, when growing up back in the 90s, when all we saw on TV, if it was Christians on news or anything, it was the evangelicals preaching hate and, just doing everything nasty that nobody else liked doing.
Well, that's the reason why I started this ministry, actually. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, because, to add a little bit of subtext here, millennials are called the lost generation.
Yep.
Whenever it comes to the church and they talk about the millennial generation, we are the lost generation. But back in the late 80s, early 90s, you had rock and hip-hop. You were starting to see Christian rock and hip-hop come into the scene. And the church was against rock music. Rock music is the devil.
Mm-hmm.
Rock is associated with Satanism and a lot of the imagery and stuff that's there. And sometimes it's in the imagery, and sometimes it's just in the way people act.
Yeah.
Whenever they're at concerts or the way they did music videos. At that point, you had glam rock and cross-dressing and stuff like that, and it was seen as an evil thing. And so whenever you had Christian rock groups like Petra and Stryper and DeGarmo and Key and White Horse, those guys were evil.
Yeah.
But that's what the millennials wanted to listen to.
Yep. I remember listening to, I believe they were Christian, Demon Hunters.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I haven't heard that in a while.
Yeah.
Holy cow. Yeah, I vaguely remember that band.
And the problem is that even on, like, when you're coming from the rock and metal side, hearing those bands that, oh, they're Christian, they got the stink eye from the hard rock guys too.
Yeah, they did.
Either side, and I give praise to the guys that did that and stuck that out.
Definitely,
because you didn't get praise from either side there.
Yeah, I mean going from the rock to the rap scene, that was also another big thing. Christian rap started in the late '80s, and you had guys like DC Talk, you had T-Bone, Stephen Wiley.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, they were kicked out of churches.
Wow.
Even the churches they attended kicked them out because they were doing Christian rap music, and they were literally selling their CDs from a trunk.
Wow.
Just trying to get their stuff out there, and the millennials were big on it.
Yeah.
So were the later Gen X guys.
Mm-hmm.
They were very into it. Hip hop was a thing, but it was seen as evil because the beat would put you into a trance that made you move your hips. I remember reading that in a magazine put out by my own denomination.
Wow.
It was in the mid 90s, and it was titled The Evils of Hip Hop. And literally said that it was evil because it puts you in a trance-like state where you just got to move your hips and your body in a seductive way. And now, Christian hip-hop is in every single church, except for those that are still very, very conservative. And there are a couple of those out there. If my wife was in here tonight, she could tell you.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the reason why I started the ministry that I've started. I started Revs Convention Ministries in 2018. And it was because of the fact that I saw a church standing outside of the MetroCon Anime Convention in Tampa, Florida. And as everybody walked by, they were yelling at them with bullhorns, and they were saying some very mean stuff to them and yelling at them and throwing papers at them, telling them all that they were going to hell because they liked anime. And I'll give the rest of my testimony on a later episode because it's actually a very long story.
Believe me, I heard it.
So at the end of all this, and at the end of that convention, God really put it on my heart that just like my generation was lost because of the hate that came from churches, not everybody in the church, but there are a lot of churches out there who are so against anime and so against manga and so against any type of Japanese artwork and cosplaying, and they are so against it that they are enraged by it and they show a hateful spirit. And the millennial generation was lost because of that spirit. And now we are in a time where that's happening again, but it's happening to the anime community.
Yeah.
It's happening to the fandom community, and I don't want that to be something that I don't fight against.
Mm-hmm.
God laid it on my heart to go against it. And so now I'm doing stuff like this. I believe that God put you in my path to become a part of this. The whole time I've been planning for a year to do this podcast, and I kept saying I need a co-host. I need at least back and forth. I need somebody to help round it out. And then you showed up one day.
Yeah, that I did. And I mean, I don't think we're on a divine path of getting put here in the same place. I think it was just a timing and coincidence.
Well, everybody says, everybody I know anyway, it all happens in God's time.
Yep.
And we don't know the time.
No, we don't.
We don't know the times when our paths are going to merge and when our paths are going to separate.
Yep.
We just got to do the most with the time that we're given.
That's true.
And this story of me and the ministry and even you becoming a part of it stems into the discussion of Trigun, because I had high hopes that God would bring me what I needed for the ministry, that God would reveal to me in time what I needed.
Okay.
And it's happened. I mean, after a year of planning a podcast, it finally happened. But if we got to look at faith in a perspective and true hope. And I think that I had to learn that over the past couple of years. And whenever I watched Trigun within the past year.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned the lesson from Trigun, which is where this came in,
Okay.
which is where this episode came from. I learned what I needed, and I learned what I had to know from watching this anime and being able to relate to a character in some way, shape, or form.
Okay.
There are many things throughout this anime that we can talk about, but the thing I want to talk about is at the end of the story. If you haven't watched Trigun, there are quite a few spoilers coming up.
Spoilers for a 20-year-old anime.
Yes. Spoiler alert, okay, guys, because I just watched it a year ago, and there's still a lot of people out there who haven't watched it.
If you haven't, please pause this right now and go watch it.
Yeah, it's a one-season anime. You'll be able to watch it in a couple of days before the third episode releases, so you'll be able to come back and listen to the rest of this. And trust me, it will make a whole lot more sense. But there are a ton of spoilers coming your way about the end of the story, so unless you're someone who likes to read the end of the mystery book, you can either skip past this part a little bit so you can get to the end of it and watch it later, or watch it and then come back. Heading into the last episodes, I gave a little bit of a teaser last week. There comes a point in Trigun where Wolfwood is killed. Wolfwood carried a cross on his back everywhere he went, and it was his greatest weapon. Upon his passing, Millie, the woman he had started building a relationship, obtained his cross. When Vash was about to set out, they were all in a state of grieving, and Millie approached Vash with this cross and told him that he should take it with him. And she handed the cross over to him, and he says, "Wow, this thing is heavy." Then Millie replied, "That's because it is full of hope." Now I want you to hold on to that thought for a minute. Because as we move forward to the battle between Vash and his brother, there comes a point in the battle when Vash has lost his revolver and he has lost the cross and he is on the ground, vulnerable, and he's feeling that all was lost. And then he heard a voice, and it said, "It's right next to you." And he dug his hand under the sand in the midst of danger, and he pulled out the weapon of his salvation from that situation, and the cross was his weapon. The cross at that point restored his hope that he could rule the day and win the battle. Okay, too, I know that there's been times in my life where I've lost hope.
Yep.
How about you?
Oh, totally. Like I kind of said last episode, was dealing with depression, kind of just getting over it with the help of good medication, good therapy. But yeah, there's been a lot of times where I haven't, seen the edge of the light, and you just gotta kind of push through, dig down, and hopefully you do have good voices in your head, telling you to keep pushing and dig in that little spot. You might find something that can help you.
Well, that's true. I was sharing a short bit of my story on a different project that I'm doing, where I was really big into recording music. At that point, I was mostly creating beats and instrumentals for underground hip hop artists and stuff like that, and some indie artists. And I was working on my own albums on the backside of that. But I was hanging out with a lot of the wrong people, and I shared a little bit of this last week. But it came to a point after my first concert where I just felt completely defeated. And it wasn't because the concert went bad. The concert actually ended very well, but the situations and issues that happened in the midst of that concert, and it was with my opening act. The situation that they created, that's what flipped the switch for me. of where am I going in my life and what am I doing. And after it was all over, my reputation was tarnished. I hated the person that I was becoming. All the friends that I thought were my friends, I discovered they weren't.
Yep.
So I found myself, for the first time in years, utterly alone. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know where I was going to go from there. It's like, God, what am I doing? And in your time of need and in your time of want, in your time of desperation, whenever you hit the bottom of the well, the bottom of the pit, and you're a complete broken person, that's usually whenever you will discover where God is and what he's been doing in your life. That's usually the point when most people find God. And for me, it was more like a rediscovery.
Mm-hmm.
Because at that point, like I said, a lot of people left my life. All my friends were gone. Girlfriend left me. Had nobody to hang out with at school. I started high school sitting at a table by myself. I ended high school sitting at a table by myself.
That was pretty much me.
And what was even worse is through the course of all these new friends that I lost, I badmouthed my old ones. Mm-hmm. And I lost to them. I mistreated them, and I pushed them away. So I was utterly alone. And that is when God put a girl who I met a couple of years prior to this at a church camp.
Here comes a long story, guys. Get ready.
No, I'm going to shorten the story. And God put her back in my life. And I married that woman. She was that spark of hope that God put in my life to kind of get me seeing where he wanted me to go. So hope is a very finicky thing because of the fact that most people have false hope and they don't know what genuine hope is.
Yep.
Whenever we look in the Bible to Romans chapter 8, verses 24 through 25, it says, "For in this hope we were saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope. For who hopes for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, we will wait for it with patience."
Man, that's a bit of a tongue twister, that one.
A little bit. I'll read it again because it is a tongue twister. It says, "For in this hope we were saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope. For who hopes for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience." Now, if you look at stuff from a standpoint of definition, by definition, the things that we cannot see, or believing in the things that we cannot see, is faith. That Makes is sense. Faith in definition. Yep. Believing in the things that you cannot see.
Yep.
So, true hope contains great faith, but that faith also comes hand in hand with patience. As human beings, we hope for better lives. We hope for material things. We hope we can reach our goals. And we hope for the grand majority of everything in this world. And a lot of times we have this hope because we can see what we want, and we think that if we worked hard enough, we can get it. So for most people, hope is a wish, or hope is a goal. It's not true hope.
Yeah.
So you have to question, are we really hoping for something? Do we really have hope? Or are we just wishing for something that we want, that if we work hard enough, we can make it happen? As Christians, we put our hope in God. We put our hope that he'll provide for our needs. We have hope that he will heal our bodies. And we have hope that he'll save our families and save the people close to us. One big area where somebody had true hope. My aunt, she had a bad liver.
Okay.
Completely non-functioning. And it comes with her choices in life. But she had a completely non-functioning liver. And she has been on a transplant list for years and trying to find people to help take care of her so that she can get the transplant done because there's a bunch of requirements and she can't get this stuff together. And she lost all hope. And my auntie is not a religious woman in any way, shape, or form. At least not at that time. She hit the bottom. She didn't know what to do. She calls my dad up. My dad is a pastor in Central Florida. And she calls him up and she says, pray for me. Just start praying for me. I've done everything the doctors have asked. I've changed my habits. I've changed my life. My liver has failed and I need a new liver. Pray for me. Pray that I get what I need to get a new liver. And my dad says, no, I'm going to pray that God heals your liver. That non-functioning dead liver. And me and my dad and my mom and my wife, and basically the rest of my family, along with our church family at the time, started praying for her.
Okay.
Within 2 weeks, we get a call, and a completely non-functioning liver started functioning.
Really? That's wow.
She put her hope in the one thing that she could not see. She put her hope in something that she thought was impossible. She had faith. True hope had that ounce of faith in it. And she had no choice but to wait. And a non-functioning liver that needed to be replaced started functioning.
Yeah, when I hear stories like that, it does question my stance on faith of, is it real? Is there something there, or is it just belief? And
it's a hard thing. I mean, especially if, like me, I was raised in the church, but there came a time in my life where my family was deeply hurt by the church, and it wasn't just me that was hurt. My mom and my dad were hurt, and the repercussions hit me and my brother, and then the repercussions ended up hitting pastor friends of ours, and it enraged me. And I was like, why would God let this happen to me? Why would God let this happen to my family? I even started questioning whether or not God was real or not. And for a couple of years, I went outside the church. I didn't go to church. I told my mom and my dad, I want nothing to do with it. I don't want to go. Of course, my mama, being a God-fearing woman that she is like, no, you going. My dad's like, my dad, he's like, no. Like, he's 17. If he doesn't want to go to church, he ain't got to go to church. Well, no, I was 16 at the time. Like, he's old enough to make that choice.
Wise man.
And he looked at my mom and he goes, the Bible says if we raise him up in the way he should go, though he depart from it, he will return. He looked at my mom and said, you got to have faith that God's going to work on that kid and bring him back. So who knows how long it'll take. It could be years. It could be decades. But this is where God needs to work on him. And I left the church completely. And I did things that I ought not do. I did some things I'm not too proud of. But there were points in time where that question just stayed with me. It's like, God, if you're real, why the world did you let that happen? Why? Now that I look back on it, I can see myself in those situations where I should have gotten arrested. I should have gotten my license taken away. I should have just been in a whole lot more trouble. I was doing things that wasn't safe. There's a shot I could have been dead.
Wow.
But I look back on it and I see where God was keeping me safe. Where I was making the wrong choice, God had a path on it so that I could help the people that I was getting in trouble with. That I could one day tell my story and tell my life and my venture into this dark place and how I got out of it. And it wasn't by myself. I remember one day hitting my knees, just bawling my eyes out because I honestly felt I was ripping my family apart.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when anything like this, you never get it out by yourself.
Oh no. And
Never.
me, I was doing it alone. My parents didn't know what was going on. And I remember one day I drove to an empty church parking lot, and it was a church that my uncle started.
Okay.
He was no longer the pastor there. There was another pastor, and I hadn't been there in a few years. And I pulled into the parking lot. Nobody was there. Just an empty parking lot. And I started yelling at the top of my lungs, screaming at somebody who I was questioning, asking him why. And that's whenever God revealed himself to me and completely broke me at the age of 17.
Wow.
I mean, I was all broken up in that parking lot. Whenever God showed himself, it was an immense feeling of peace. It was a, yes, you sinned out the wazoo. You've been doing junk you had no right doing. But the feeling of, it was like being embraced. You know, whenever you really need you really need a hug, guys. Yes, there are some times when we need a hug, so don't judge me.
Yep.
But you feel that warm embrace. That just, it feels like it's hugging your entire body from the inside out.
Yep.
And you not only know you've been forgiven, but you feel the love off of it. That's the reason why I say a lot of people find God in the darkest spot. Because that is the point in time where we let go of ourselves completely.
Yep.
And we open up ourselves to hear God. That was a point where I could not, I no longer could question if I believed in God or not. Because God touched me.
Right.
God touched my heart. God eased my mind. That was utter peace. And it was a hope restored. Like, I didn't mess up bad enough that I can't get back on the correct path. It's that straight and narrow path we talked about last episode, last week. Where, we go off to the side. But there's always that curb that takes us right back to the straight and narrow path. But there's those of us who try to push through the brush because we don't want to go back. We think we got a better way. But even if we push through the brush, most people in the woods, if they push through the brush, are going to go in a circle.
Yep.
And they're still going to end up right back where they started. And that's what happened to me. So I can't question whether or not I believe in God, because yes, I believe in God. Because I know what God did for me. And I can tell the story of what God did for me. I had somebody one time tell me I needed to write a book because of all the junk I went through. And I spent a week worth of telling my story to a couple of people. And you should write a book. I
mean, from the stories you've told me, yeah, I think you should write a book. Or, book it out through the podcast here.
Hey, we could do that. We are working on starting a Patreon account, so who knows, I may do that. My story will be told to those who join us on Patreon. So, it could be something we can look into. Telling my story would be interesting, to say the least. But telling my story also helped a lot of people. We're going off on a fox trail from hope to testimonies.
Yep.
I believe it's in one of the Johns. It talks about how your testimony is your greatest weapon. It's your greatest tool. There's people out in the world, if you automatically go to them and you start pushing the Bible on them, they're not going to listen to you.
Oh, no, I'm totally one of those people.
But if you share your testimony with somebody and what God is doing for you right now in your place, right there, in living color, living
Yep.
time, what God is doing now, they will listen.
Well, it's the old adage of you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar.
Yeah, and it's sad that people look at the Bible as vinegar.
Well,
but it's an
when I mean
honest
by
thing,
vinegar, I mean, hatred, you're going to go burn in hell, or all that stuff.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. People want to push the fire and brimstone side of it, but they don't want to tell you the good news end of it. And that's what our testimony does. It opens up the ability for us to say, this is what God did in my life. This is a grace that he showed me. Now let me tell you about the grace of God. Mm-hmm. And therein lies the good news. And that's where we go back to the cross. So it's very profound. Hope is a very profound thing. And I am glad that God put me through what I went through. I'm glad that even though I hated what I've done, and I hated what I did to people, I am very glad that I was put through it. I'm very glad that I went through it, because of the fact that now it's become a testimony that I can share to people who have been in my shoes. Because my testimony starts from being bullied to becoming the bully, to going from a nerd into popularity. And throughout the course of all of that stuff, because I went through all of that, I truly found who I was.
That's a lot, yeah.
I lost what I wanted to do with my life, but that change was necessary for me to become who I was meant to be, who I am meant to be. If we look back on that, we look back on the many stories in our lives, we look back to Vash the Stampede, and we can see where in all of these stories, whether it's mine, yours, or in our world of Trigun, we can see where we find hope in our situations. And whenever we hit those dark places, not everybody's quite hit that place. And maybe somebody hasn't been introduced to the opportunity of that place. But a lot of us, we find our hope down on our face in the dirt at the cross.
All right.
So it's a very profound thing, and that's to see that in Trigun, and to see that in my own life, where I had to go back to that point. I had to go back to that point where I say, God, I'm lost. I've done wrong. God, forgive me. Come back into my life. Come back into my heart. Clean me. Make me 100%. And reset my path. Hit the reset button, please. I don't want a game over. I want to be able to do this thing. I want to be able to beat the game called life.
Yep.
So, yeah. Any other last thoughts from...
Nope, I got nothing.
Got nothing? All right. Well, it is that time again for Questions from a Cup. Questions from a Cup is a segment that we do on this podcast where we take questions from our listeners and we put them into a cup. We draw these questions about faith, anime, manga, whatever you can think of, and we give you answers. So you can submit your questions on our Facebook community page, Rebs Otaku Talkers, or comment on the podcast in the comment section, and we can draw the question and we can dive in and discuss it, dissect it, and get you the answers that you are looking for. So without further ado, K2, I had you draw last week first, so I will draw a question. And last week I said a relation to Goku in my cup, and that's because the cup that I use has Goku on it. My daughter got it for me for Christmas last year, and I put it to work. So that's why my cup for this has Goku on it. So the question is, do you prefer sci-fi or fantasy? What is your favorite setting? This one is not an easy one for me. I was raised sci-fi and fantasy, but I learned over time that it all depends on the story. There are certain stories that cannot be told from a sci-fi perspective. This is not anime, but there was a show that I really like to watch, and I watch it over and over and over again, called Eureka, and it was on sci-fi, on the Sci-Fi Channel. Eureka is a town that is riddled with scientists. It's actually a town made for scientists to invent things and come up to answers for questions, and how they make money is building things for the military. And these high school students are like graduating, their genius level. They're graduating high school at like 12, 11, 10.
Wow.
And one of the kids was said to be a cinematic visionary. And he did Midsummer's Night Dream from a sci-fi perspective.
Okay.
And it was horrible. Because that's very much a fantasy setting.
Yeah, I remember watching a movie back in high school. It wasn't Macbeth. It was what's the other big one you read in high school?
Romeo and Juliet.
Romeo and Juliet. It was like a modern day Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, the one with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yes, in L.A. Yes.
Yeah, no, I haven't watched that one. I think we've got it. I think it's on the shelf, but no, I have not watched it because
it was interesting.
Yeah, I heard that if you like the story of Romeo and Juliet, don't watch it.
Probably. I mean, like most film to book adaptations, I'm sure it was not good.
I mean, it would make sense. I still haven't watched it, and it's okay. For me, it just all depends on the story. It all depends on the setting. And if it's not meant for it, then it shouldn't be there. But I do thoroughly enjoy sci-fi, and I do enjoy fantasy. I enjoy them both. I think the only area where it kind of collided, where I thought it was pretty good, was Sword Art Online.
Okay.
Which was good up until the third season.
Okay, there we go. I was afraid the comments were going to start burning up there for a second.
Third season to me was horrible. I felt like they were reaching. They became too adult. And I think they destroyed it. But seasons 1 and 2, it's like Ready Player One meets Final Fantasy and Lord of the Rings.
Yep.
I mean, it was a pretty cool show.
Yeah. Let's see. For me, I kind of similar to you. Both stories are pretty cool, depending on what they got going on in them. But me, I like to have nice, clean stuff. I don't like sleeping on dirt floors. I don't think that's very comfortable. I'm going to go with sci-fi. And more specifically, this is probably going to be not the best setting to ever be in, but I like Warhammer 40k. So, yeah. I'm not going to live long or probably enjoy myself, but hopefully I'll be able to kill something in there before in my short time frame that I'm alive.
That's funny. I was just watching something last night and an advertisement came on, and it was for the Warhammer movie, the anime.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I was watching just the trailer, and I was confused because I was never really interested in the games.
Yeah.
I may have played them once or twice, but I was never interested in the games. And to watch the trailer, I was just like, wow, I kind of want to watch this. But then I'm afraid if I watch it, I'm not going to get it because it was literally described as a prequel to the game.
Yeah. Yep, I know exactly what you're talking about. And yeah, that is somewhat of a prequel to the game.
So have you watched that one?
Yep.
What'd you think about it?
It was very well done. It was originally made by a guy who did a short YouTube video. I think it was about 10 minutes or so in total, but divided into like 3 separate things. One guy animated it. I'll have to show you this after the podcast is up.
Yeah, I'll have to show you the one that I was watching at, because who knows, it could be something different. I think this one was a prequel to Warhammer 4.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Well, it could be the
Yeah,
same
no,
thing.
I think I know what you're talking about, but yeah. Yeah, there are many podcasts devoted to lore dumps on that and YouTube. If you're interested, go check them out.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look into it because it had me questioning last night. All right, you want to do one more question?
Sure, I'll grab one
All
more.
right, so let's shake it up. All right. What question do we got?
What do we got here? Oh, this is always a fun one. Pineapple on pizza.
I am pro pineapple.
All right. I used to be heavily against pineapple on pizza, but I can start to see why people like it and think it's a good idea. The one I can't get behind is mushroom.
I like mushroom too,
Mushroom.
but I like mushrooms by
It's
themselves.
a meaty taste without any meat.
Okay, well I can see.
You know, I
see
gotta
where it's
have my meat.
Me, I'm a mushroom guy. I'll eat mushrooms raw.
Okay.
I just like mushrooms. Now, I have a secret recipe pizza
Okay.
for pineapple. And it is one that even got my wife to eat pineapple on pizza. So I'm going to share with you guys my secret. Now, Papa John's has a barbecue pineapple pizza. Me, I modified it just a little bit. So I get a large pizza with the regular crust, you know, no cheese in the crust or anything like that. I do a barbecue pizza, so barbecue base, cheese, pineapple, and chicken.
Okay.
And it's a chicken barbecue pineapple pizza. That pizza is off the chain. And it may be something that's a little bit more doable for people because it's not marinara sauce. So the pineapple actually plays into it a whole lot more with that tangy barbecue sauce. The sweetness kind of goes in with it. And then you got the whole chicken thing. And to me, it's like the pineapple pizza or the Hawaiian pizza on steroids.
Yeah.
But that pizza, I have yet to meet one person who has not pushed themselves to try it and did not agree that pineapple did at least belong on one pizza.
I would probably try that combination, not from a Little Caesars though, because I am from New York. So I it is against anything I do that I cannot have a chain pizza.
Oh, like I said, this is Papa John's.
Yeah.
It's like OG Pizza Hut.
Again, but it's not a mom and pop run little Italian nook.
If you want a little Italian pizza place, there is a place in Ocala called Sammy's Pizza. Place is off the chain. Another mom and pop place, which is going closer to Silver Springs, is Laredo's.
Okay.
But Sammy's to me is better. And Sammy's is right off of 60th. It's around the corner from Next Church, which is where
we go.
So if you want a New York style pizza, Sammy came from New York, and he brought the pizza with him.
All right, yeah, he knows how to make a good pizza.
So,
I'll trust that guy.
I'm not a big fan of New York pizzas. Like, I've been to a lot of different New York pizza restaurants that are mom and pop owned. Him and one in Brunswick, Georgia called Fox's Pizza. Those are the only two places where the pizza was like, this is the only thing that would make me go for New York pizza. Because my family mostly lives in Illinois, so me, I'm more of a Chicago-style
you're a deep dish guy.
I like my pizza's a pie. Okay,
Yeah.
it's not bread with cheese.
It's
on
not
it.
finger food.
It is a pie. So to me, the thing that trumps New York style pizza is Chicago deep dish.
Okay.
And who knows? We can probably do a survey on that at some point to see
I think
what
that'd be
people
a good
deserve.
idea. Yeah.
Or not deserve. Yes, people deserve Chicago style deep dish. No, what people, what our audience and our listeners prefer, whether it's Chicago style or New York.
Remember, you can prefer the Chicago, but just remember, you're wrong. It's New York all the way. It's okay to be wrong. There's no shame in it.
He will find himself to be very wrong. Did you know And apparently, kiwi on pizza is a new thing.
Kiwi on pizza.
Pineapple's looking good now, isn't it, guys?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Whoever came up with that should be burned at the stake. or at least charged with war crimes. I don't know.
Okay, find whoever started this kiwi thing and take him to Guantanamo Bay. Yeah, no. Everybody in the world will agree with pineapple on pizza after seeing this whole kiwi thing. So I think I'm going to stop there because that's just a little nauseating to think about. So we're going to go to a new segment called Anime Did What? This segment, we are going to talk about weird yet cool things that companies have done bringing anime into their products. And the first one we're going to talk about is a pretty cool one. And I'm going to try and figure out how to get this thing, because right now it's a Japan-only item. So I'm going to try to figure out how to get a hold of it. But the creators of Naruto have done a collaboration with Transformers. And they are going to release this Naruto Transformer. It's a 2-piece set. And it consists of one of the Transformers is Kurama. And the other one is Gamagichi. It's going to hit the stores this spring. But the price tag on it is a little high for the size.
I mean, it's got to be, what is it, like 200 probably, if I'm guessing, if it's like a special edition?
Wow. You are actually very high.
Really?
$54.99.
54, okay.
It's pretty cool. It's a complete set with 2 kunai, 2 chakra plates, a Rasengan, a Rasengan Shuriken, 2 pair of swappable Kurama hands, and Gamagichi sword and summoning scroll.
Wow.
So it's a full setup.
That sounds pretty good.
But from what I saw in the pictures, they aren't that big.
No, they're tiny.
They're the size of like the OG Transformers.
Okay.
But I think, because from what I read, Kurama takes 14 steps to transform, and Gamagichi takes 12.
Wow.
So they seem like they're going to be a little bit more complicated, because your stage 2 Transformers back in the day was like 8 to 10 moves. I actually have one of the highest stage Transformers. It's a Optimus Primal, and it turns into 6 different things. So yeah, it's going to be pretty sick. It's going to be pretty awesome.
Oh, wow.
The next thing, this is that thing that I was telling you about before the show, that the prices are just going to be insane. And the girls are going to love this. In 2023, Jimmy Choo released a line of Sailor Moon shoes. The brand released a second line of Sailor Moon inspired shoes. Okay. So we're on Sailor Moon part dose, okay? These shoes were inspired by Sailor Pluto, Sailor Saturn, Sailor Uranus, Sailor Neptune, and Chibi Moon. Which pretty much tells you that they did it from, Sailor Moon Crystal?
Yep.
The boots have a starting price of $2,710. They have a set of sneakers, okay? $718 starting price.
I mean, people bought the first wave, so there's obviously a market for it.
It doesn't stop there. If you really have deep pockets, for a whopping $7,500, you can get a crystal-studded Luna P clutch purse. Very tiny purse. I could put my 2 fists together, and it'd probably be about the size. $7,500 for a cat purse.
This is why men like pants pockets. This is why you don't need to worry about anything.
Come on. We're just waiting for Louis Vuitton or somebody to partner up with... we'll just say they can partner up with Attack on Titan, because, that kind of matches their color scheme. Okay. And just come out with a wallet and charge us $1,200 for it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's pretty much where it would be at, but it's still not $2,700 for a pair of shoes and $7,500 for a purse. But they have something for people who don't have deep pockets, though. And they have a series of accessories for cell phones and clothing like scarves and stuff like that are still a few $100s, but they're just not as high. Yeah, still too rich for my taste.
Yeah. I mean, I was shopping at Walmart earlier today, and I just happened to pass through the Lego section. I couldn't believe how much the Legos have gone up in price.
Oh, yeah. Well, you see, I got a couple of Lego things here in the studio. Just the one thing that's next to you was $100. Last but not least, there's something for the Pokemon kid inside of all of us.
Oh, boy.
An 11.5 pound, life-size Porygon plush.
This I have heard.
It is 2.5 foot tall and 3.9 foot from nose to tail, and it has a starting price tag of $380 American dollars. That one would probably be the only one besides the Transformer that I'd be tempted to buy. Just because of the fact that I think it would be really funny to see my baby girl trying to ride Porygon. I think that would be cute as all get out. That to me would be worth $380. So yeah, crazy stuff is happening, and anime is changing the way we get products. I mean, there's so much more, but if I were to tell you everything on this episode, I'd have nothing for next week. Couple of things I wish I could buy. But that is all the time that we have for today. Remember, for in this hope we were saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope. For who hopes for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, we will wait for it in patience. True hope contains faith and comes hand in hand with patience. Father God, I thank you for the opportunity to do this podcast. I thank you for the opportunity to share my heart on a much larger scale than I could have ever dreamed. And I pray that all the words that are spoken, we ponder it in our hearts and our minds, and that our listeners ponder on it as well, and they take it to heart, and they spread what they discover with their friends, and they spread what they find in their own anime worlds. They spread the Christ that they find in those worlds. And as we wrap up today's episode, let us remember that you are with us in every story, whether it's animated or real. And I pray that you, Father God, will help us to see you in everything that we do and watch. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
So I want to thank everybody for tuning in to Reb's Otaku Talk. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and on X. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. And share your favorite anime moments with us on our community page, Reb's Otaku Talkers. And share this podcast with everyone you know. Until next time, I hope your anime collection grows strong and your faith grows stronger. See you later, guys.
Have a good night, guys.
Well, I guess that's a wrap.